The secret that broke my family apart, and the unexpected truth that followed. I never thought I would be the kind of person to tell a story like this, but here I am, still trying to wrap my head around what happened. For years my life seemed normal, at least, as normal as life in a middle-class suburban family could be. I grew up believing my parents were the picture of stability. My dad worked long hours as an accountant, my mom was a school teacher, and my younger sister Emily and I had what most people would call a good childhood. We weren't rich, but we never lacked anything essential, and I always thought that the strength of our family was unshakable. That illusion shattered the day I found a letter hidden inside my mother's dresser. It wasn't just any letter, it was one of those old-fashioned handwritten ones, folded neatly, with a faint perfume scent still clinging to it, even though it was dated almost 6 years ago. The handwriting wasn't my dad's, and the way the words were written made my stomach twist before I even finished reading the first paragraph. The letter was from someone named Michael. He wrote about how much he missed my mom, how he thought about her constantly, and how he regretted that their time together had to be kept in the shadows. I froze when I saw the line. I wish things were different so we could finally be together without all the lies. I remember just sitting on the edge of her bed, my hands shaking as I held the letter. I kept telling myself it had to be some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe it was from a friend, maybe it was before she met Dad, maybe it was something innocent I just didn't understand. But the more I read, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a friend. My mom had been involved in something more, and it wasn't some long-forgotten fling from decades ago. The letter was dated only 6 years earlier, which meant that during the time my parents were still together, while we were living under the same roof, my mom was writing and receiving letters from another man. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I kept it to myself, though the weight of it was unbearable. Every time I saw my mom smile at my dad or hug my sister, I felt like I was watching a play, and all of us were unknowing actors in her script. The worst part was that my dad seemed so devoted to her. He adored my mom, always bringing her flowers on their anniversary, always insisting that we have family dinners together on Sundays. I started to hate myself for knowing this secret, because it made me resent her, even though I didn't have all the facts. For weeks, I wrestled with whether I should tell anyone. Emily was only 17 at the time, and I didn't want to dump this kind of emotional chaos on her. My dad I didn't even know where to begin. He was the kind of man who believed in loyalty to a fault. I honestly thought it would crush him, but holding it in was eating me alive. The breaking point came on a random Thursday evening. We were all sitting at dinner when my dad asked my mom if she remembered the first time they met, and he laughed about how nervous he had been. She smiled, nodded, and said all the right words, but I could see something flicker across her face. Guilt. That's what it was. I knew it because I had been looking for it ever since I found the letter. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up, went back to my mom's room, and started searching. I knew it was wrong, I knew I was invading her privacy, but at that point, the need to know was stronger than any guilt I felt. And I found more. There was a small, locked box hidden beneath her winter clothes in the closet. I managed to pry it open with a bobby pin, and what I found inside made my chest tighten in a way I'll never forget. More letters. Dozens of them, neatly tied with a ribbon. Some were from Michael, others were from my mom to him. They spoke about love, about longing, about how they wished they could have a future together. There were even a few photos. One of them showed my mom and this man at a restaurant, sitting way too close, her hand on his. It wasn't just some flirtation. It was a full-blown affair, and it had gone on for years. I sat there in the dark, holding those letters, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize my own mother. She wasn't the woman who had taught me right from wrong, who had lectured me about honesty, who had spent years telling Emily and me that family was everything. She was someone else entirely. Someone who had been living a double life while we went about our days in blissful ignorance. When I finally confronted her, it wasn't planned. I had been holding everything inside for so long that it just exploded out of me one Saturday morning. Emily had gone to a friend's house, Dad was mowing the lawn, and I walked straight up to Mom in the kitchen and put the stack of letters on the counter. Her face went pale. She didn't deny it. She didn't even try. Instead, she sat down, buried her face in her hands and started to cry. I wanted answers. I wanted to know how she could betray Dad like that, how she could betray us. But the only thing she kept saying, over and over, was, "It's not what you think. There's more to it than you know." I didn't believe her. At least, not then. What she eventually told me in the days that followed, that was the part that changed everything. The days after my confrontation with Mom were unbearable. She avoided me as much as I avoided her, but the tension in the house was impossible to ignore. Dad noticed, of course, but I guess he chalked it up to some normal mother-child conflict. He had no idea that his entire marriage was about to implode. On the third night, Mom finally came to my room. She looked older somehow, her face tired in a way I'd never seen before. She sat on the edge of my bed and whispered, "You deserve the truth. But once you know, you can't unknow it." I crossed my arms, trying to look stronger than I felt, but my stomach was in knots. "Then tell me, because right now, all I see is that you cheated on Dad and lied to us for years." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't cheat in the way you think," she said softly. I almost laughed. "Not in the way I think. How many ways are there to carry on an affair with someone named Michael while still married?" But she didn't flinch. She reached for my hand, and when I didn't pull away, she started talking. According to her, Michael wasn't just some guy. He was my dad's best friend. That one hit me like a sledgehammer. I pulled my hand back and shook my head. "That's not possible. Dad doesn't have a best friend named Michael." She looked down. "Not anymore. Not for a long time." She explained that when she and Dad first got married, they had this couple they were very close to. Michael and his wife Laura. They were practically family. Always over at each other's houses, celebrating holidays together, even taking vacations as a group. But something happened between Dad and Michael that destroyed everything. She wouldn't go into detail, at least not yet, but whatever it was, Dad cut him out of his life completely. The thing is, Mom never stopped talking to him. What started as secret phone calls turned into meetings, and eventually into something more. "I know how it looks," she said, her voice shaking. "But I loved him. I loved both of them, in different ways. And I didn't know how to let go." I was stunned. My dad's best friend, my mom's lover. It sounded like the plot of some bad drama series, not my actual life. I told her she had to come clean to Dad. She shook her head violently. "You don't understand," she said. "If your father finds out, it will destroy him. And not just because of me and Michael. There are other things you don't know." I pressed her for details, but she refused to say more. Instead, she begged me to promise not to tell Dad. She said she would find the right time to explain everything herself. I didn't believe her. For a week, I carried that secret like a burning coal inside my chest. Every time I looked at Dad, it hurt. He was so oblivious, so trusting. I started to notice things I hadn't before, like how tired he looked when he came home from work, or how he always made little jokes to lighten the mood, probably without realizing how much effort it took to keep our family feeling whole. Then came the night everything truly began to unravel. Dad was in the garage, looking for some old tax documents, when he stumbled across something. I don't even know what it was, he wouldn't tell me, but I heard the yelling, loud, raw yelling. I ran downstairs and found my parents in the kitchen, Dad gripping a folder in his hands, his face twisted in rage. "You lied to me!" he shouted. "All these years, you lied?" Mom was crying, trying to reach for him, but he shoved her hand away. "Is it true?" he demanded. "Are you still in contact with him?" I froze in the doorway, my heart pounding. This was it, the moment everything blew up. Mom didn't answer right away, and that silence told him everything. He slammed the folder on the counter so hard it made me jump. "Do you know what this does to me? To our family?" I thought he meant the affair, but then he said something that nearly knocked me to the floor. "She has a right to know," he said, pointing at me. His voice cracked. "You should have told her a long time ago." I looked between them, confused and terrified. Told me what? Neither of them spoke. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Finally, Mom whispered, "Not like this. Please, not like this." Dad turned to me, his face red with anger and pain. "You're old enough to handle the truth," he said. Then he took a deep breath and dropped the bomb that would change everything I thought I knew about my life. "You're not my biological child." The words didn't make sense at first. I blinked at him, certain I'd misheard. "What?" He repeated it, slower this time. "You're not mine." My knees nearly gave out. I grabbed the edge of the counter just to keep myself standing. Mom was sobbing now, begging him to stop, but he pushed forward. Tell her who her real father is." And that's when Mom finally said the name I already knew, but never expected to hear in that context. "Michael," she whispered. "It's Michael." The world went silent around me. My head was spinning, my chest tight, my vision blurry. I couldn't process it. Michael wasn't just mom's secret lover, he was my biological father. I don't remember much after that. I know I ran upstairs and locked myself in my room. I know I could hear Dad's muffled shouting, mom's cries, the slam of a door. But inside me, everything went numb. For 21 years I believed I knew who I was. I believed I was my father's daughter. And now, in one night, that identity was ripped away. But the nightmare wasn't over, because in the days that followed, I learned that Michael wasn't just some ghost from the past. He was closer to my life than I could have ever imagined. I didn't leave my room for 2 days. I barely ate, barely slept. My phone buzzed nonstop with texts from my mom, then my dad, then both of them begging me to come downstairs and talk. But what was there to talk about? They had lied to me every single day of my life. Every birthday card, every family photo, every hug from Dad. It all felt tainted now. I kept replaying his face in my mind. The look he gave me when he said, "You're not mine." It wasn't just anger. It was heartbreak. Like he'd lost something that could never be replaced. On the third morning, Mom knocked softly on my door. "Please," she whispered, "just let me explain." I opened the door only because I was too tired to keep fighting. She looked terrible, eyes swollen, hair unbrushed, like she hadn't slept either. She sat on the edge of my bed the same way she had before and told me everything. She admitted that her relationship with Michael hadn't been a one-time mistake. It started before I was born, during the first year of her marriage with Dad. She swore she hadn't meant for it to happen, but that Michael had always been around, charming and supportive in ways Dad sometimes wasn't. She said she thought it would fizzle out, but then she found out she was pregnant. With me. She claimed she didn't know for sure who the father was. But deep down, she suspected. And instead of confessing, she buried it. She let Dad believe I was his, and he never questioned it. At least not until recently, when he found some old letters she'd kept hidden in the garage boxes. Letters from Michael. I asked her where Michael was now. She hesitated before answering, which was enough to make my stomach churn. "He's still in town," she admitted. "He never left." That blew my mind. All these years, the man who might actually be my father was living somewhere nearby, and I never knew. And then she dropped another bomb. "He wants to see you." I laughed. But it came out hollow and bitter. "Oh, now he wants to see me." After 21 years of silence. "He didn't know you knew," she said quickly. "He respected my decision to keep it quiet. But now that the truth is out, he thinks you should meet him." I told her no, absolutely not. But later that night, curiosity gnawed at me. What did he look like? Did I resemble him? Was my love for writing, my sarcastic sense of humor, my temper, were those things from him instead of Dad? The following weekend, against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him. Mom set it up in secret, at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. I'll never forget walking in and seeing him for the first time. Michael was tall, with salt and pepper hair and a kind of wary charm. He looked nervous, fiddling with his coffee cup until he saw me. And then he froze. "You look just like her," he whispered when I sat down. I didn't know what to say. My throat was dry, my hands shaking. He started talking quickly, like he'd been rehearsing this for years. He told me he'd always wanted to be part of my life, but that Mom made it clear it would only hurt everyone if he tried. He said he respected her wishes, but thought about me every single day. He had photos, grainy shots from across a soccer field or from a school concert, moments he'd attended from a distance like some ghost. That should have creeped me out, but weirdly it didn't. It just broke me. All that time, my dad was clapping in the front row while my real father was hiding in the shadows. At one point, Michael leaned across the table and said, "I know this is a lot, but I don't want to waste any more time. I want to get to know you. If you'll let me." I wanted to scream at him for staying silent. I wanted to hug him for finally showing up. Mostly, I wanted to run. But instead I said nothing. I just sat there staring at the man who'd been a secret half my life. When I finally told Dad I'd met Michael, it shattered what little was left of our family. Dad's face went pale, and he walked out of the room without a word. Later, I heard him in the garage, smashing something heavy against the wall. That night, he packed a bag and slept in a motel. The next day, he told me he couldn't live under the same roof as Mom anymore. That every time he looked at her, he saw betrayal. That every time he looked at me, he saw a reminder of the man who stole his wife and, apparently, his daughter. I tried to tell him he was still my dad. That biology didn't erase 2 decades of love. But he shook his head and said, "You'll understand one day when you have kids of your own. Blood matters." Those words cut deeper than any scream could have. In the weeks that followed, everything collapsed. My parents filed for separation. Mom cried constantly, but I had no sympathy left to give. Dad barely spoke to me, and when he did, it was clipped and cold. And Michael, he kept reaching out. He sent texts every day just checking in. Thinking of you. Here if you want to talk. I ignored most of them. But the thing about secrets is, once they're out, they can't be shoved back into the dark, and no matter how much I hated it, a part of me needed to know him. So one night, I texted him back, and that's when things took a turn I never expected. Because Michael wasn't just trying to be a father figure. He had a hidden agenda, one that could tear apart whatever fragile pieces of my life were still holding together. When I finally texted Michael back, I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe a father-daughter dinner, maybe some awkward but genuine attempts at connection. What I didn't expect was how quickly he responded, almost like he'd been staring at his phone waiting for me. Thank you for giving me a chance. Can we meet tomorrow? There's something important I need to show you. That message set my nerves on fire. I didn't know if I wanted to dive deeper into this mess, but curiosity was a stronger force than fear. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a small diner on the outskirts of town. Michael looked different this time, less nervous, more calculated, like he had a plan. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside were copies of legal documents, birth certificates, old medical bills, letters. I kept everything, he said quietly. Proof that I was always part of your life, even if you didn't know it. I stared at the papers, my head spinning. Why are you showing me this? He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Because you deserve to know who you are. And because your mother destroyed my life to protect hers. His words dripped with bitterness. He told me how Dad had once been his closest friend. His brother in all but blood. But when Mom got pregnant, everything shifted. According to him, Dad found out the truth much earlier than I thought, years ago, but agreed to keep quiet for the sake of appearances. Michael claimed Dad used that secret to push him out of their lives, threatening to ruin him if he ever came near me. It was a completely different version of the story than Mom had told me. And suddenly I felt caught in the middle of a war I never asked to be part of. Then Michael dropped the real bomb. He wanted me to legally acknowledge him as my father. He'd already spoken to a lawyer. A DNA test could prove everything, and then he could petition for parental rights. Even though I was an adult, I was stunned. Why would you even want that? I'm 21. It's not like you can play catch up now. His face hardened. Because it's my right. And because your father. He caught himself, then corrected. The man who raised you doesn't deserve to keep pretending. I won't let him erase me anymore. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me. This was about revenge. I left the diner shaking, more confused than ever. When I got home, Dad was waiting in the driveway. His eyes were red, his jaw tight. You saw him, didn't you? He asked. I couldn't lie. I nodded. He didn't yell. He just looked so tired, like the weight of the last 2 decades had finally crushed him. I tried to protect you from him, he whispered. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe you needed to see for yourself what kind of man he really is. That night, the 3 of them, Mom, Dad, and Michael, ended up in the same room for the first time in over 20 years. It wasn't planned. Michael showed up at our house uninvited, demanding to talk this out. I'll never forget the shouting that followed. Dad accused Mom of ruining their family. Mom accused Dad of using silence as a weapon. Michael accused both of them of stealing me away. And in the middle of it all, I just broke down. Stop! I screamed, my voice hoarse. Do you even hear yourselves? You're all so obsessed with your lies and your pain that you've forgotten the one person who didn't choose any of this. Me! The room went quiet. For the first time, all 3 of them looked at me, really looked. I told them I didn't care about their history, their grudges, their betrayals. I cared about the fact that my entire life had been built on secrets. That the man I called Dad now looked at me like a stranger. That the man who might actually be my father saw me as a pawn in some twisted revenge scheme. That my mom, who was supposed to protect me, was the one who put this entire nightmare into motion. I won't let any of you decide who I am, I said. Not anymore. And then I walked out. For weeks after, I stayed with a friend, ignoring all their calls. Mom sent long texts begging for forgiveness. Dad left short, stiff voicemails that always ended with, I love you, no matter what. Michael showed up at my workplace once, but I told him firmly to never do it again. It wasn't easy. Therapy became my lifeline. Piece by piece, I started to separate my identity from theirs. I realized that Dad, the man who raised me, taught me how to ride a bike, helped with my homework, cheered at my graduations, would always be my father, no matter what DNA said, and Michael. Maybe he was my biological connection, but that didn't make him my parent. Eventually, Dad and I began to rebuild. It was slow, fragile, but real. We'd meet for coffee, talk about neutral things, sometimes even laugh. One day he said, "I may not be your blood, but I'll always be your dad. If you'll let me." I cried harder than I'd ever cried before, and hugged him like I never wanted to let go. Mom, things with her are still complicated. I visit sometimes, but it's distant, polite. There's love, but there's also a wall between us now, one she built, and one I'm not sure can ever fully come down. As for Michael, I chose to cut him off completely. Maybe one day I'll want answers only he can give, but for now, I need peace more than I need his version of the truth. It's been a year since that night everything fell apart. I won't pretend I'm fully healed, but I'm stronger than I thought I could be. I've learned that family isn't about secrets or blood or old betrayals. Family is about the people who show up, who stay, who love you even when the truth is ugly. And sometimes, choosing yourself is the only way to break free from the lies.